Many Overwatch 1 fans felt disappointed and betrayed by Blizzard when they found out new heroes to Overwatch 2 would be locked behind a battle pass. In a series of interviews with gaming publications, Blizzard has given their answers for why they feel this is justified and a good fit for Overwatch 2, but I also want to expand on my previous video where many of you were surprised that I was in support of this business model, so much to say that I think that it's the best battle pass gaming has to offer, and I still stand by that statement, but it's easier for me to say because I have access to information that the rest of the public doesn't. So I want to try to bridge that gap as much as I can today, and I want you to know that I fully understand if you are not on board yet. You probably have to listen very carefully to the way I was explaining it, and a lot of the arguments might fall short until you actually get Overwatch 2 properly in your hands to see what I've seen. Here's something that I think I will leak to you, hoping I don't get sued and Bobby Kotick owns my life forever, but I want to explain that I fully understand anyone who thinks it's blasphemous to not give all players access to every hero just like it was in Overwatch 1, because I had the same exact assumption when I privately heard about these changes. I was furious with Blizzard. I told them directly that if they make Overwatch 2 pay to win and ruin the competitive integrity of the game, that I would denounce it publicly and quit the game. Yeah, for real, for real. There was a timeline that if Blizzard messed up this monetization model, your Overwatch was going to stop covering Overwatch. I lost sleep due to this. I was incredibly stressed with this information on my shoulders with not really anybody to talk to about it. There's only a few people knew, and I legally couldn't say anything, and I was just stuck in my apartment screaming into a pillow about how angry it made me. But Blizzard took a lot of that feedback, listened to the many criticisms I had, worried about the different ways that it could affect the game negatively, and they got feedback from other creators as well, but I'm told that mine, because I was so scathing in my criticism, like, you guys don't understand, okay? It's one thing to get on a video and say, Blizzard is the worst company ever, and yada, yada, yada. It's another thing to do what I do, which is to their face, tell them exactly what I think, even if it makes them cry. Okay, like, I can't stress enough the years that people sucked up to Jeff Kaplan even as he was making what I thought was really bad decisions. Okay, I'm still the same guy. Thankfully now, rather than shoving me away, Blizzard was interested to hear my scathing criticisms so that they could improve the system. And lo and behold, they went out and made sure that there's many fair paths for a free-to-play player so it doesn't feel like it's impossible to gain access to all of the hero content just by playing, but still fund the development of further new awesome things for Overwatch. What they landed on, I think, is an incredibly fair compromise. There's a whole lot of context that they didn't reveal that I think helped us feel really at ease with these decisions that are just really hard to see if you're not actively playing the game or seeing it. So I'm trying my best to tell you things that I can't exactly tell you. It's really hard to see how good of a deal Overwatch 2 actually is when you're blinded by the design mistakes of Overwatch 1. And so many of the arguments and complaints about this come from assumptions created by Overwatch 1 that don't apply to 2 in any way. It's a different game. It's a better game. All right, to try to finish off and cap off this point, let's throw Kiriko under the bus. Hey, everyone likes Kiriko, nicest guy on YouTube. He says, here's some Overwatch 2 Battle Pass math. You can earn a total of 540 coins per season by completing weekly challenges. Seasons are about 2 months. Or 9 weeks. Seasons alternate between a new hero or new map, except season 1 and 2, which will be getting back-to-back heroes. And then says you'd only have to spend $30 a year if you wanted every premium battle pass. I think what he actually means is the ones with the heroes in them, because they alternate, right? But the point is, a free player can earn enough coins to get all that content anyway. And he compares to a single AAA game that costs, actually, it's $70 now, you boomer. And then it goes on to say, like, a lot of these other games you buy and then you just shelve and you don't get a lot of value out of them, whereas Overwatch, of course, is a game that we'll be playing for years now, thanks to the business model. And I know there's two arguments to this. Is the price justified as a way to distribute content? And then there's another part is, does this break the competitive integrity of the game? You'll have to be patient to me. I'll get to that point. But first, just thinking about it from a numbers perspective, in terms of the cash flow of why this is good for continuing development of the game, the truth is the dream of Overwatch's business model is already dead, right? So people comparing to Overwatch 1, what you're comparing to is a dead game that doesn't get new heroes and hasn't for years. So we can still be thinking like, wow, they should still be adding things for free to Overwatch 1. Well, they can't afford to because they need to pay the people that are making it. I think this was really scummy of them, actually. I don't think free to play is scummy because that's direct. You know what you're constantly getting all the time, and the devs are held accountable to continuously make stuff for you. Whereas Overwatch 1 pretended to have its cake and eat it too. It was a boxed model that said it was a live service game, but they stopped developing it like it wasn't. Like it was just, oh, extra nice, really fair for us to give you any heroes. You should be grateful for what you have. But meanwhile, the game needed more development. Like it wasn't done at release. And if they don't have the money to do that, well, then we have a much worse product and everything comes too slow. That's what I hated about Overwatch 1. It's really hard to dedicate more resources if there's not a revenue stream to support it. Whereas, as Walter Kong is going to explain, the incentive structure is direct with Overwatch, where, yeah, let's say Overwatch heroes are the most important thing. Well, shouldn't you buy into that system somewhat and tell Blizzard directly, here's a fair price for continuous development of this game? Like, I just wonder, like, when people say this, do they want to pay for anything? What's a reasonable amount of money to pay for a game for a year, let's say, of constant content and development? CarQ seems to think that like $30-ish is pretty darn good, and I tend to agree with him. The language that Walter from Blizzard is using is like, yeah, they know that heroes are the most engaging content. And here's the key. We designed this model. It seemed to be a very strong fit to put those heroes into our new engagement systems. There is this goal to be able to not just deliver a great experience on launch in October, but to be able to continuously deliver content and experiences for years and years to come. And I think this like wealth of content is the big difference to feel better about this change. They've got a lot of cool stuff coming. All right, leaks here, extra, hear all about it. I'm really excited for the continuous stream of content, guys. It's good, but they're developing this game correctly, in my opinion, which is to say they're thinking about adding lots of things to it in a wide category, as opposed to before it was like, well, maybe one day a couple devs feel like making the workshop mode in their free time in between. No, that's not the way Overwatch 2 is developed anymore. And I think that's the right way to develop an expected to be ever evolving live service game. The elephant in the room for so many players is the competitive integrity point. So rather than allude to it anymore, let's talk about it directly. There's a big problem with Overwatch 1's player base is that the game had really bad design for the player base that it had, and B, the player base didn't actually know the real competitive strategy and counter at any given point. Like the best the community would ever get is like a sliver of understanding. You'll read this in a comment, right? Like, what if the enemy has a pharmacy and you don't get to pick Cassidy? Wow, that's an interesting comparison, considering Cassidy's range has been pulled in so much that at the ranges pharmacy should be playing at, Cassidy should have no chance to beat her. Like maybe on a couple maps, it'll be close enough range, but for the most part, Cassidy gets rolled by Pharah after his range got destroyed. So I don't know if that's exactly the example you want to make. And instead of that, why don't you learn Echo or a longer range hit scan? But the point is, even with those examples, they don't exist in reality because the base set of heroes in Overwatch are unlockable for free anyway. The extra ones are the ones that they are putting behind the Battle Pass that you may or may not get. But those are new mechanics added onto the base game, which, keep in mind, a whole slew of players getting Overwatch 1 even for free would be a big deal. But they're getting Overwatch 1 on top of all the other cool Overwatch 2 things. So while us old players who bought the first game might be upset about it, there's a whole lot of players that are going to be really happy to have such a content-dense game that at release has so much in it. So the truth is, Overwatch players in Overwatch 1 barely understood how to play the characters they think they know how to play, much less the swaps they think they should go to counter the thing that's beating them. That's a fact, okay? I've seen the film. You could talk to any coach I think I've heard talk about this, kind of agrees with this. Overwatch 1 is just a really complicated game, and the RPG team comp builder components of it change the rules so drastically in different matchups that it's so hard to know what you should be doing at any point. So I don't blame anyone for not knowing it. Overwatch 1 being designed that you're intended to swap heroes and engage with the counter pick comp metagame was a bad design decision because players statistically didn't do it, but also I would say strategically can't do it. A very important stat that we got is that John Spector said that 99% of players play less than 12 heroes. So like about a third of the roster. Metro tweeted, which might be a leak from the Creator Summit, I don't know, that 80% of players play less than 3 heroes. People's actual functional hero pools based on their skill level or competence with the heroes themselves are already limited. So to expect players to have like this massive hero pool list that can counter any situation is an unreasonable expectation of the player base, and it's not founded in the facts of the data or even your personal experience. Like, so what? If your teammate swaps to the thing they think should counter the enemy, they still have to land the play in order to counter it. We can teach that D.Va counters Pharah, but there's many ways D.Va just dies to Pharah if you don't know how to play the matchup, right? It doesn't work that way. So it's a little silly for Overwatch 1 to be designed in a way where you are expecting your teammate to swap to something to help you. That's bad design. Overwatch 2 instead, you should think about what do you know how to play and pick that to get effectiveness out of yourself. And Blizzard has said as much in the recent interviews that the game is being designed to allow your own player expression to matter. So whereas Overwatch 1 was sort of designed to require you to learn all the heroes and nobody did, so you just like took a big fat L when your tanks didn't have synergy and the enemies did. Like, that's just bad design. That caused so many bad games in Overwatch because the game was just too complex. Needed too much interconnectivity in a wide hero roster with players that only can play a few heroes out of each role max. So it was always just like a matchmaking problem that you were doomed to have a bad experience a good percentage of the time. So Overwatch 2 being designed in order to remove that rock, paper, scissors aspect, as Aaron Keller goes to say, it gives so much more fluidity to the gameplay. Of course, meta comps will matter, I think, to pre-made teams. It'll matter in the Overwatch League, but the average player, your skill expression is the most important part of your value. Whereas in Overwatch 1, you were constantly just bombarded with matchups that you kind of were expected to just lose and you're supposed to swap. That's a silly way to design the game. An argument that I've seen a few times, both on Reddit and in the comment section, is if they are getting rid of rock, paper, scissors design, why does Kiriko cleanse an anti that comes from either Junker Queen's ult or Ana's nade? Doesn't that mean they still have rock, paper, scissors balancing? Now, this might sound like an intelligent argument. Overall, I think your worry about this type of interaction just fundamentally misunderstands how Overwatch 2 works. Like, what you're thinking of is Overwatch 1, where Brig 1.0 was designed to exist, and then Tracer in that era was literally unpickable just by that hero being in the game. Another example may be like when the enemy has 6 stuns they can pick. Doomfist is basically unpickable, to be honest. Again, that's another type of team comp matchup thing that just doesn't exist in Overwatch 2, really. Now, let me explain how Kiriko's cleanse interacts and why it's actually a hero interaction, not a rock, paper, scissors counter. Let me reframe that argument with an interaction you already understand. Let me ask you, does Ana's anti-nade make Zenyatta a worthless hero? Zen's entire ultimate can get hard countered by a nade. So surely that means it's a rock, paper, scissors design, right? Well, no, that's not how it works in practice at all. And I don't think any reasonable player would say this. Like, yeah, you have the potential to counter Zen's Transcendence, but that's not a hero counter. That's two heroes having an interaction with their abilities. And that's a very interesting one, in fact, because Transcendence has the healing power to potentially save you from Nanoblade or other nano combos. But if she lands the nade, she can counter it. But that requires a setup, a skill shot, timing, positioning, and the enemy can outplay it in a number of ways, either by positioning differently or blocking the nade, forcing it out, etc. That's not a matchup that's decided at the hero select screen, sort of like the Brig 1.0 example. Instead, Discord is insane, Sleep and Nade are insane, both ults are insane. It's just a great hero shooter matchup that it's not so clear who wins. Depends on the execution each and every team fight, pretty much. And of course, the map and everything else. But it's not like it's clear who always wins. This is very similar to Kiriko's cleanse, but it's just much harder to use in my opinion. But let's say you do cleanse an anti. What ends up happening in this matchup? Well, I'll tell you. Kiriko's healing sucks. And Ana, although maybe yes, she's strongest when she antis an enemy. That's her biggest play, perhaps. But she also has a ton more tank healing than Kiriko does. So way more sustain she's adding to the team comp. So I think potentially, yeah, at higher tiers, sick aim Kirikos will do so much damage with their headshots that maybe she does outplay Ana. But for the average player, I think you're going to realize pretty quickly that when your Kiriko doesn't have insane aim of a pro, that getting more tank healing that Ana can do with a nade to amp the healing and then work up to a nano is a much more reliable way to play. She'll probably be earning ults faster because she heals. Yeah, you can use the cleanse to trade out the anti-nade. But the question is, what happens for the rest of the game when, well, you don't cleanse the enemy's heal buff effect? So I think this is another interaction that's kind of similar to Zen. And it's like, in fact, maybe you might even prefer Zen in a lot of situations, even though he, quote unquote, gets countered by nade hitting Trank. Well, to be honest, Discord's just going to be a lot easier of an ability to land than anything Kiriko does. What I'm trying to really nail in is that Blizzard did land the freedom of strategy to make the game not feel so rock, paper, scissors. This is what makes me love Overwatch 2 so much. And if I think that, I don't actually think any player is going to feel like they need to have every hero in Overwatch 2. It's going to be too overwhelming, to be honest, because statistically, you do not play every hero anyway. As the devs say here, the majority of our players play a relatively small number of heroes. When they do switch heroes, we believe it's because they're switching to a hero that they're familiar with, a hero that they're effective with, and a hero that they're having fun with. And as players get to be a higher and higher skill level, that band of heroes they play, it actually narrows. So they play less heroes, not more. Because it takes a really long time to get good at a hero, to play at a high level, we think that the higher level a player is, the more time they'll be putting into the game. So the chances of them having either unlocked the hero on the free track of the Battle Pass or just using coins that they've collected in a previous season to upgrade from the premium Battle Pass is pretty high. We want players to catch up and unlock all the heroes. If you were to come to the game late a year down the line, we have a lot of avenues for you to play. If I didn't think this was true, I would be saying it and screaming it. But I do think this is true. And if this is a way to fund continuous development for the game and not hurt the game, which I don't think it does, I think it's a good idea. John Spector goes on to say they put a ton of time and energy discussing how to make the system fairer for new players, how to make sure that we're preserving the competitive integrity of our game. So he asked the question, is it actually going to impact the play experience if someone has 34 out of 35 heroes? Which, remember, that's the case, right? Because the original base set of heroes aren't in the Battle Pass. It's just the new ones that are coming out. And when you buy the Battle Pass, you're funding that constant stream of development. So I'm on board. You get my $10, Blizzard. And do I think my play experience or your play experience is going to be destroyed if you have a teammate that doesn't do that and doesn't have access to the new hero? No, because here's the truth. Okay, you already have teammates that don't play the most ideal hero for the situation. You've already seen this scenario in a game where it was much more punishing for that to be the case. In Overwatch 1. In Overwatch 2, it kind of doesn't matter what your team play. It matters what you do. Other cool things that they added is that there will be another Mercy style support coming. There's another hero that has a mechanic that players have been asking for a long time. That is like such a vague clue. I couldn't even begin to speculate on it. And on top of that, with new heroes, they're going to be attempting to narrow the gap between the tank and support deficit against the DPS roster. So they're going to keep making damage, but kind of skew a little bit the new heroes towards the other roles to eventually balance them out a little bit down the line, which I think is a cool idea. Overall, guys, I'm sincerely really hyped about all of this because I think Blizzard have landed on what is not just a really fair model, but one that players are going to savor. Even though you can't go infinite with the Battle Pass, what you do get is actual good content that you want to have. These other Battle Passes where you go infinite are filled with trash cosmetics you don't really want. Overwatch 2 is a game packed with tons of heroes that have charm and a lot more work, and let's face it, art put into them. Their characters are complex and interesting, the cosmetics are desirable, and the asking price for me is incredibly fair. And the game's just fun. Like, I feel like we might not be so mad about this. If you could just go play it right now, I don't have to argue with you about why it's not going to hurt your play experience. You could just play it and find out for yourself. Because I've played it, and at no point playing Overwatch 2 did I ever feel like, oh my god, if I don't have a certain hero, I'm just going to insta-lose this game. Because in reality, the bigger barrier of entry to heroes is your skill. That's the crazy thing. So yeah, the gate might feel bad to interact with, but if you don't have the skill to play that hero anyway, you shouldn't be picking it in Overwatch 2. It's not like Overwatch 1. All right, guys, that's everything I got for you for today. If If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and let us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos come out. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.